Hi Tony, thanks for the footage and sorry for the delay getting back to you. As you know, I've been quite busy and tied up with other things at the moment. I'm going to just briefly go over your backswing changes towards the end of this lesson, but I want to sort of reverse engineer this a little bit and give you some priorities in regards to the transition and the move that you've been struggling with for a number of years now, judging by your emails, etc. So I've put the dots on and the lines on to save me a little bit of time during this process, and I matched up face on and down the line. I just want to go through a few things with you and give you a very simple drill to work on, certainly a simple move. You may find it challenging in regards to timing the strikes initially, but during the winter months, especially if you're repping in the net now, that shouldn't pose too much of a problem for you. So from a much improved P4, what I see is, and I've just traced, I'll just quickly go to your backswing actually, I've just traced the lead shoulder face on with the green dots. Initially the head would go, as you can see there, the head has a tendency to sort of drop because the lead shoulder works down quite abruptly in the initial part of the backswing, before then leveling out as you approach the top. And when you look at the top of the backswing position relative to, or the head relative to where it started, that's starting to improve and become more stable. So not quite as incremental as we would want it, but certainly more stable. So from a good position at P4, what we should see now is we should see a situation where the lower body moves forward, so the lower center moves forward, whilst the upper center of the shoulder turn, stays relatively stable. And when we do that, the lead shoulder will work a certain way, the rates of rotation will look a certain way, and the butt of the club, when viewed from down the line, will trace a certain path or trajectory in the early part of the downswing. So what we see with yourself is we see a tendency for both the upper and lower center to drift forward. So if you consider the axis tilt you've created at P4, which is the white line, so that's the difference between the upper center and the lower center, as the lower center moves forward, this axis tilt should become more neutral by P5, and then should start to actually lean away from the target slightly at P6. And what we actually see with yourself is that that side bend that you create, or that axis tilt you create at P4, which is towards the target, which is fine, is maintained into P5 and is only slightly diminishing by the time we get to P6. So what this means is that the lead shoulder is going to get too far forward too soon. It's going to be relatively low to the ground for too long in transition. The trail shoulder is going to sit too high at P5, too high at P6, and as a result, the wrist angles, you see the purple lines, are starting to come out too quick. Now, all those things combined result in a butt of the club which works ever so slightly, and this is not a massive amount, but ever so slightly outwards. I appreciate these lines don't all match up, but you get the idea, in transition, and the lead arm can't quite stay in long enough. We see the lead shoulder down the line disappearing pretty quickly from view. The opposite is true as well. If you get a player who slides the lower body too fast, holds the wrist angles too long, his club will drop down too quickly. His lead shoulder will stay visible for too long, and his right shoulder will get too low to the ground, which is the opposite move of what you make, which is leading us to the type of drill and the type of move that I want you to focus on. And as with the other lesson, what I'm going to do on this one, I want to do this in two parts because you've got the net there, you can do some repetitions. And before you continue to work on this, I want you to see the benefits of the drill that I'm going to give you. So if we do maybe 2 or 3 sessions in the net, shouldn't take much longer than that, working on the drill that I'm going to give you, working on the feel that I'm going to give you, you should start to see some marked improvements in regards to, I'm going to go through these down the line, trajectory of the butt of the club from P4 to P5.5 should be a little bit more downwards, not quite as much outwards, certainly in that initial transitional move that you make. We should see a lead arm that's angled in a little bit more, and we should start to see a shaft that is hitting you more on the mid bicep as opposed to high up near the shoulder. From face on, we should see a stable upper centre. The head should not be drifting forward. We should see a lead shoulder that traces a slightly less downward move from 4 to 5. So ideally that lead shoulder would work level. So less downward 4 to 5, and certainly disappearing behind the body, or behind the head should I say, much later. For you, I would say round about P9. We should also start to see some change in axis tilt. So whereas it goes from leaning towards the target, staying towards the target, still staying towards the target, before ever so slightly moving away, we should start to see that axis tilt go from towards the target at 4, neutral at 5, leaning away from the target at 6, 6.5. And as you do that, you're going to have to start maintaining the wrist angles in a more appropriate manner. It's sort of chicken and egg on this one. The better the body works, the easier it is to maintain the wrist angles, etc., etc. And you will also start to see a trail shoulder from face on that gets much lower to the ground at 6, 6.5 and 7. So the drill for you, if you look at the purple lines I've put on the wrist angles at 4, and you see how quickly the wrist angles come out from 4 to 6.5. What I'd like you to do, and you can do this sort of as a dry run before shots, or you can also do it as an actual shot hitting exercise, especially in the net, ideal for in the net. Because we're not bothered about how far the ball goes or where it ends up. We just want you focusing on the mechanics of this at the moment. What I want you to do is I want you to maintain the angles created between the shaft and the left arm. So maintain the wrist hinge all the way from P4 to P6.5. I don't want you really thinking about anything else, and I don't want you concentrating too much on how you're going to do this. I just want you to hit some shots where you maintain the wrist angles from 4 to 6.5. Now, in order to do that, you're going to have to do certain things, most of them of which we've already touched on during this short online session. So initially start by swinging to 4, stopping, and then going down to 6.5 without letting any wrist hinge come out whatsoever. Now, what I also want you to do is I want you to focus on maintaining the angle in the right arm to 6.5 as well. So hanging on to accumulator 1 and accumulator 2 all the way to 6.5. So do that as a dry run first, video it. If you want to send it across to me, feel free to do so. Also, in regards to hitting shots, I want you to do the same process, but we're going to do it slightly more dynamically. You're going to swing to 4 and stop. You're going to hold it for a count of 3, and then you're going to hit the shot whilst trying to maintain those angles discussed all the way to 6.5. So you're going to try and hold on to the angle in the wrist and the right arm for as long as you possibly can whilst hitting the ball into the net. Now, when you do that, I want you to video it and send it to me. Whilst you're starting to get familiar with this process, feel free to send me video as often as you like. I strongly suggest that you video your swing on a regular basis, but you judge yourself by the key parameters that I've just discussed in this session, certainly for now. But a very simple drill: swing to P4, stop, whether you're doing it with or without a ball, hold on to the angles in the right arm and the wrists for as long as possible. Okay, good luck with that. I look forward to getting the footage off you, and then we can do part 2 of this lesson in about a week's time when I've got the different footage or improved footage, and I can show you the comparisons and we can go into some more details on them.